Sing unto the Lord a new song, and his praise from the end of the earth. Ye that go down to the sea and all that is therein, the isles and the inhabitants thereof. Dalam nama Bapa, Anak, dan Roh Kudus. Amen. More than a year ago, the African-American poet and activist Sonia Renee Taylor wrote this words in an Instagram post. We will not go back to normal. Normal never was. Our pre-corona existence was never normal other than normalized grief, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, extraction, disconnection, confusion, rage, hoarding, hate, and lack. We should not long to return, my friends. We are being given the opportunity to stitch a new garment, one that fits all of humanity and nature. I wonder how you may feel about June the 21st, not in the sense of the date itself, but in the context of the lifting of all restrictions, if ever that date is possible, and return to what we would describe as normality. All of us here have experienced in some way or another the effects of coronavirus in each of our individual lives over the past 16 months. For many of us as students, we have experienced an unprecedented move to online study over the past year. I remember attending my first lecture close to 3 years ago in October 2018 when it was said that a recorded online lecture would never replace an in-person lecture. Now, all in-person lectures have been more or less replaced by full online delivery, with an intent to continue forward through a blended form of learning. How quickly what is considered normal can change. It has shaken the confidence of the idea of what normal means. It has changed the narrative that encompasses events with finished dates. Time and time again, the pandemic has dismantled our ability to control events. It has made planning and really anything so volatile, so incapable of being grasped. Where do we fit in the narrative of the last few months? The vicar of St. Martin's in the Field in Trafalgar Square, the Reverend Dr. Sam Wells, says, we can look back on the last century as a sustained effort to gain mastery over all the unpredictable and hitherto uncontrollable aspects of our natural environment, such that what we would call normal became increasingly subject to our decision and definition. I want to now turn to the first lesson, Isaiah 42. It speaks of the restoration of the promised land, the vision of God. It enters a universal and eternal dimension, one that is vividly described, rich in wonder and imagery. It is a scripture that looks outward. As a popular contemporary song, So Will I by Hillsong, often heard in chapel, puts it, and as you speak, 100 billion galaxies are born. In the vapor of your breath, the planets form. If the stars were made to worship, so will I. In the midst of this wonder is the servant. The servant is called, verse 6 of Isaiah 42. I, the Lord, have called thee in righteousness and will hold thine hands, and will keep thee, and give thee for a covenant of the people, for a light of the Gentiles. Walter Brigham, an Old Testament scholar and theologian, suggested the poetry of this text, and I quote, entertain the thought that social relationships in the world can be radically reordered, and the servant is to effect that reordering. It represents a mandate for a renewing of the relationship between us and God, and the relationship between man and one another. It is about God. The will of the Creator is to be enacted by the servant. There is a concept of Jubilee, which is often referred to in the Old Testament in Deuteronomy and Leviticus. The return of all property to its original owners and heirs and cancellation of debt, essentially preventing the centralization of land and wealth in the hands of a few. A time to renew ourselves, a time to renew social order, to renew pre-existing structures, the Jubilee. Isaiah verse 7. To open the blind eyes, to bring out the prisoners from the prison and them that sit in darkness out of the prison house. The servant is called to liberate, to renew the relationship of us and God, and us to each other. We have a call to understand and reimagine a God who is not confined to some sort of box, but a God who is much greater than our imagination, who is much bigger, who calls each of us children. And that calling of our relationship to one another is important. It means moving beyond our fears, prejudice, ways of thought and understanding. In another quote by Sam Wells, in a community of fear, we begin with our hurts and our stereotypes and find 100 reasons why we can't do things or certain kinds of people don't belong. It means beginning to appreciate each other. It means taking on a God-filled lens to truly love one another just as God has loved us. As our second lesson reads, it means directly looking at the lame man in Lystra, just as the Apostle Paul did, and liberating him, focusing on the word directly. It means being a blessing to each other. It means ultimately reimagining our relationship with one another. The Apostle Paul and Barnabas traveled great distance to Lystra. The cripple at Lystra was resigned to a life as a cripple and did not seek healing, although it is mentioned in the lesson that Paul saw that a crippled man had faith. Paul prophetically pronounces healing, stand up on your feet. Is that what the new normal looks like? Is following God's lead, effecting change in the circumstances we are all in and will be placed in? Is that what it will be about? Enter into God's kingdom. Enter into a narrative where, as the Magnificat, which was sung just now, puts it, he had put down the mighty from their seat and had exalted the humble. One of liberation from existing constructs of this world. A narrative much grander than we can ever imagine. One that we are all invited to be instruments of God, in union with God, entwined in the Master Weaver, God's rich tapestry. Someday God will show his tapestry and we will see how God has woven each of us and what we do together to his own glory. For close to 2 years, I've been blessed to serve as your chapel clerk. It has been an experience like no other. I started off more or less completely in the deep in August 2019. And I'm extremely grateful for the support of the chapel faithful and for the kind words of encouragement. Coming from Brunei, my parents have always taught me of the importance of God's timing, of God's knowing what's best for each and every one of us. A deeper understanding of God at work, of God placing us in different situations at different times, will be a blessing to one another. The well-known verse from Ecclesiastes 3, to everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. God places us where we are for a reason. In the words of Cardinal Newman's mission of my life, God has created me to do him some definite service. He has committed some work to me which he has not committed to another. I have my mission. I may never know it in this life, but I shall be told it in the next. I am a link in a chain, a bond of connection between persons. Before I came to Durham University, I was like everyone else, waiting for my A-level results to see if I would make my firm choice or not. And also at the same time faced with challenges in regards to funding my study with international students. It was very much a time of intense and prayerful waiting. One particular memory struck out. I can't remember who the specific person was, but she prayed that God would lead me into Durham. Looking back, I can somewhat see why God placed me specifically in Durham at this time, for a purpose. We are all here in Durham, we are all here in this chapel for a purpose much greater than we can ever imagine. The reimagining of our relationship with one another and the purpose God has called each and every one to. For some of us graduating, we are about to embark on a new chapter in a new normal. It will be extremely different from what everyone has ever been used to. It will mean confronting the challenges of climate change, inequity, injustice, tension, disorder, and many more. The narrative of this world will continue to shift, it will continue to fleet, it is volatile, it will continue to disappoint even the most optimistic of us. We don't know what the future will hold, but I wonder what the new normal will look like. I believe God is inviting us to enter into his narrative, to rethink, to re-envision, to renew the groans of his creation, to remove the veils from our eyes, and to enter into the mystery of his goodness. To sing unto the Lord a new song. Jesus comes among us and says, do not be afraid. Touch me. Eat with me. Draw near with me. Take my hand and be in union with me. Are we ready to set aside the old normal and to allow ourselves to be recaptivated by the Holy Spirit into a new garment? To set aside what is fleeting and to enter into being into God's rich tapestry and grand narrative unlike anything we can ever comprehend? Are we ready to let God take hold of our imagination and build a world that fits all of humanity and nature? Are we ready to let go and let God take control? I end with a famous poem by Minnie Lewis Hastings, The Gate of the Year, which I remember reciting as my plane taxied down Brunei Airport, bound for London in September of 2018 as I prepared to open a new chapter as an undergraduate at Yale University. And I said to the man who stood at the gate of the year, "Give me a light that I may tread safely into the unknown." And he replied, "Go out into the darkness and put your hand into the hand of God. That shall be to you better than light and safer than a known way." So I went forth and finding the hand of God trod gladly into the night, and he led me towards the hill in the breaking of day in the low peace. Amen.